Hello everyone and welcome to this video on Pluto in the 5th house. If you have Pluto in the 5th house in your astrology chart, this video is for you. I'm Cassandra the Saffron Sage, helping you use astrology to evolve. We're talking about Pluto and we're talking about this placement in the 5th house. So we will talk about the mythology, the story of Pluto. Then we'll talk about the nature of the 5th house. And then we will talk about what it means when Pluto, the planet of power, death and rebirth and transformation, is in that 5th house of creative potential. So let's get right into the video. If you haven't already done so, you guys make sure you catch me on Fridays at 6:30, where I go live doing mini readings. You can PayPal or Venmo me and get a live reading with me. I do this every Friday at 6:30 Pacific time, and you can actually go and set your reminder to join us for that. So don't miss out on that, especially if you're new to this channel. And hit that subscribe button and the bell while you're at it if you want more videos like this, more of the Pluto through the houses, videos on career astrology, money in the chart, and monthly, bi-monthly at least, energy reports on the full and new moons. So now straight to the video, guys. Pluto in the 5th house. Pluto is the god of the underworld, watcher of departed souls. And when I started doing research into Pluto, you know, the basic story that comes up over and over is the Persephone myth. So the Persephone story is that Pluto kidnapped Persephone, took her to the underworld, and her mom, Ceres or Demeter, depending on which mythology you follow, got mad, understandably, and came after her. But by the time Ceres was able to sort of get someone involved, make a deal, try to get Persephone back, Pluto had already gotten her to eat pomegranate seeds. And for each pomegranate seed she ate, this kind of locked her in to a certain amount of time in the underworld. So what ended up happening is Pluto did keep his word and give her back, but because she ate those seeds, he ended up getting to keep her half of the year. So the story goes that when we have spring and the all the flowers are growing and everything's blooming, this is when Ceres has her daughter and she's not grieving. And that the 6 months that we have winter is when Persephone is in the underworld. Now, this is not a story of victimization. It's actually a story of empowerment because, first of all, according to some of the myths, Persephone got kidnapped, but others, she went willingly. So this story has a little bit more to it. That when I did some research, a lot of the research comes from mythopedia.com, great resource. Pluto was not really talked about in a negative light in any of the research I did. Very interesting. This is actually a story of empowerment because when Persephone goes to the underworld, she isn't just a victim down there, she actually becomes queen. And becoming queen of the underworld is a metaphor for becoming the master of our own subconscious mind. So whenever we call on Persephone or we work with Persephone, I actually did call on Persephone. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So, I mean, if you want to know more about that, we can do another video on that. But I did call on Persephone. It was not an easy time in my life. Okay, so just consider yourself warned. Going through all of the things in your subconscious mind and clearing them out is not an easy process. And, it takes it's a process of maturing and being able to be willing to see, everything. And I gotta say, there were times in my life where I really thought I had already done this. And man, there's always more layers. There's always more layers of that subconscious mind to unravel and understand and really harness and to be empowered. Because when we are, and this is Pluto, you guys, when we are living out these past lives, these evolutionary, these karmic, these subconscious patterns, we feel powerless. But when we understand the deeper lesson, when we know our Pluto polarity point, when we understand how we might be unconsciously creating that behavior or attracting or somehow allowing that situation in our lives, when we have some kind of understanding of this, it doesn't make everything perfect, but we can begin to really harness our power and direct it to where we want to go. We can be queen or king of our own subconscious minds and therefore step into maturity, because that Persephone myth is about mother, maid, and crone. It's about going from a victim and a child, whether we're an adult or not, going from that child archetype of things happen to me to that adult, mature, wise archetype of I'm harnessing my power in the ways that I can. This is how Pluto is, though, right? It's either it's going to rule us until we learn to rule it. Okay, that being said, other little tidbits about Pluto is that he is the god of wealth, the bringer of wealth, because diamonds and jewels and money, it comes from underground. So this is interesting, especially if you think about like how power corrupts, and about how they say money is the root of all evil and all these things. And also how a lot of people who do have wealth, they definitely preach mastering the subconscious. So these things are connected. Wealth and power, our subconscious minds, and what drives us, all interconnected here. So Pluto's identity was comprised of a couple different entities. So there's Hades, that Greek entity, and Pluton. So Pluton, aka Dispater, had power over the underworld and mineral wealth, which, the underworld was known as the resting place for departed souls. A little bit about Pluto's family tree. Saturn was Pluto's dad, which means Poseidon and Jupiter were his brothers, and Ceres, Juno, and Vesta were his sisters. So this means Persephone was his niece. So it gets a little cringy there. And a little tidbit that I learned in my research is that the reason Pluto fell in love with Persephone was because Cupid shot a dart at him, because Cupid didn't want him to be lonely down there in the underworld watching over all those departed souls. So the fact that he kidnapped her kind of shows a little bit about Plutonic love. That, Plutonic love is like, if I love you, I'm going to own you and possess you. I'm not saying that's good or bad. There are different levels of that, of course. So that's what I have on Pluto. So Pluto in astrology, the actual planet, represents our potential to transform. Again, the place in our chart where we either rule it, like it rules us until we learn to have power over it. Now, there are different things that can make this stronger or weaker for different people in terms of what makes a strong Pluto or a weak Pluto. But as far as like whether this is a strong influence in your life, we all have it. But some are going to have more aspects. Some are going to have conjunctions. Some are going to have the nodes in the same sign. Some are going to have it as a skip step, right? There are certain things that can make your Pluto lessons be more central to your life theme. And some that, will not be as much. But either way, Pluto is where we are going to feel like we have no control over this area of life. We desire it, right? Because Pluto is a soul's desire. And sometimes that soul's desire gets a little bit distorted into a desire to possess or have control, right? Pluto is usually where we want to be in control. And it's usually where we need to release control, because the polarity point, which is the opposite sign and house of Pluto in your chart, is what to focus on to sort of allow in the evolutionary lesson. If you have a bunch of planets on Pluto, this is going to probably be a little bit more challenging. And then there are other things that can make this experience a little bit more, I don't want to say easy. Nothing with Pluto strikes me as easy, but there are some aspects, like the easy aspects to Pluto, can actually make it easier for you to understand and know what you need to do with those lessons. It doesn't make the lessons not show up. It just gives you more of an ability to go, oh yeah, I know what I need to do here, or to understand the lesson as it is unfolding. Whereas people with the more challenging aspects like conjunction, square opposition, those are going to be the ones where it's harder to know when it's happening, why it's happening. And even if someone were to tell you, it's not like that's going to fix it. So Pluto is a very, very significant planet in the astrology chart. I've always felt it as an anchor. It anchors us to that area of life. And to the amount that we're able to release and allow in the opposite energy is really the amount of evolution we're going to experience through that specific energy channel, I guess you could say. Other things about Pluto as a planet, this is generational. So it goes through a sign in like between 14 and 30 years, which means everyone born around the same time as you is going to have that same Pluto. And everyone born at that same time, based on the sign of their Pluto, is going to have a certain collective soul purpose. Now, these are the general themes. Everyone in your same class isn't going to have the same exact evolutionary lesson. So where it gets specific is what house, and then the relationship to the nodes as well help us determine, the actual lessons of Pluto for each person. There is also, Pluto by house is going to be how you moved through your past lives, what you're used to, kind of like an energetic comfort zone, what your soul feels like it wants. And that polarity point, which is the opposite sign or house, the opposite point in the chart, this is going to represent the potential for evolution. This doesn't mean you will do it. Sometimes, the way it works is Pluto, wherever Pluto is, you're probably going to cling to that way of being. And then a spiritual crisis will happen that knocks you off of that. And then if you get back too far into that same way of being again, that same, a similar spiritual crisis will happen until we learn how to integrate that lesson more. So knowing what and where your Pluto is really helpful to know where to focus, to, avoid those crises, and also to just have a deeper understanding of our evolution. So let's now talk about the fifth house. The fifth house is a sextile house, which means it follows an angular house. The sextile houses are the 2nd, 5th, 8th, and 11th house. And the fifth house is really kind of known as the fun house. It's the house of creativity, self-expression, children, things that are like being in the moment. So it's like gambling, it's having fun, it's dating, it's flirting, it's really a lot of really fun stuff in this house. Leisure, entertainment of all kinds, and I think I did say creative self-expression, but it's like how we express ourselves and also our creativity. So now let's talk about Pluto in the fifth house and what it means. First of all, you are going to feel like you have a special purpose in this life. There's going to be this sense of, I'm here to do something important. So it's like you were famous in a past life, and that's what's natural to your soul. That's what's comfortable. And because of that, you can kind of enter in this life with almost like an expectation that everything's going to be done for you, everything's going to happen for you, and almost come across to others as just a little extra because your soul remembers what it was like to be treated as special. And in this life, especially in early life, there's almost this natural insecurity around that, where if you're not treated as special, especially when it comes to your creative self-expression, then you can have a reaction. And so for children, as you come into life with this placement, you're naturally going to be more sensitive to not getting enough attention. It's like if you were to try to be in a play when you were a child and you didn't get the part in this with this Pluto, you could freak out, right? Or you could have a hard time as a child if you had siblings and they got more attention. This could cause little meltdowns when you were a kid, and you may or may not remember this, but the idea here is that people with Pluto in the fifth house are going to kind of sort of want in some way, shape, or form to have attention on them. And I'll talk more about different ways this can manifest because it doesn't always manifest in a straightforward way. And you may be sensitive to getting or not getting attention for what you're doing, or just in general getting attention. So this can show up in your purpose and your career, but it can show up in your relationships where if the person you're with doesn't give you enough love, or what feels like enough to you, this can cause you to feel like you're having almost like an existential crisis around that topic. And then you can end up, in certain cases, in extreme cases, you can end up creating problems and cheating on your partner because they didn't give you enough, special attention. Or not saying everyone with this placement will do this, but these are the extreme cases where it's a constant need for attention, a constant need for approval. There's another kind of sense here, especially when you're younger, to sort of move through life as if a red carpet should be in front of you the whole time, right? Because your soul remembers this past experience of having fame or recognition. And so there's this soul memory, and the soul is like, well, that's how it's supposed to be, right? Now, this could be problematic or it could be okay, just depending on how it expresses for you, where for some, Pluto in the fifth house, this could feel like you just want things, therefore you get them. Or for others, you could, especially in early life, feel like you don't get what you want. Now, part of this is because the soul desires to have that attention, but the needs of the soul are different. So we'll talk about how that sort of special crisis, which every Pluto has, manifests here later in the video. So when you're little, you can be more sensitive when your brother or sister get more attention than you, or they win an award or something, right? Like this would be something a Pluto fifth houser would struggle with. And as you get older, this can still exist, and it can sort of get you to sort of do things to be more of the center of attention, or be more engaging, or feel pressure to entertain. That it's not always going to show up that way though. There's a sense of like you're going to feel like you need to be in control of your purpose. And if you're not, it might not feel good. It might feel like things are totally off if you're not paving the road of your life and driving that car of your life down the road of your life in the exact way you want to be going. For some, this can show up as a more sensitivity to criticism around creative work that you put out there, almost even like feeling more shy, like I don't want to put this out, I don't want to do this video because someone might not like it, Pluto and Virgo, perhaps that perfectionism could show up. So there's the deep soul need for that recognition, but then whatever sign you have it in, it might create a conflict here. So the need for validation could be conscious, where you're like, yes, I love acting. Yes, I love painting, and I want people to like it. Or it could be subconscious, where you could totally avoid anything putting yourself in the limelight, but that soul, there's an inner conflict in that case, because the soul really deeply wants that and remembers what that was like. And I would say this would be probably more common in a case where you had negative manifestations in that past life. So if you have Mars with Pluto, or like squaring it, this indicates violence in a past life. So it's like if you were famous and someone violently killed you for it, well, then your soul will probably remember that and not want to express it, but still have their memory of feeling like you're supposed to get attention in this life. Sometimes this can show up in a need to prove that you are more powerful than other people, and it can be separate from your purpose, right? So this could just be a natural, very competitive streak that you have. Having this placement, you can just feel like you are the star in your own movie and everyone else is a supporting role. If this placement is out of balance, and most of us, our Pluto is out of balance, so there's two extremes you could go to. The one extreme is that you want to tell everyone else in your life what to do. There's this sense that I know better than you do. This feeling like if only you do what I say, and everyone in my life in this movie plays the role that I assign, then, I'll be happy. Or there's this feeling of needing to have control here. So you might find that you want to tell people what to do with their lives, or you have great ideas for what other people should do. Now, this can express in a positive way, where you are an actual positive force that's motivating other people to do good things with their lives. However, you have to watch out with this placement, because the deeper need for control, there's a temptation to follow that, to really have that and to follow it. But the way that we work with our Pluto is by focusing on that opposite sign and house, and we'll talk about that polarity point later in the video. Another way this can manifest, though, is you can feel powerless to create your own destiny. So you can feel powerless, like you're deeply down, your soul is like, I know this is what I'm supposed to do, but then you don't know how. And this depends on like where the ruler of Pluto is in the chart, where the nodes are in the chart. But basically you can feel like, how do I do this? And then that feeling of really, really wanting something, because Pluto's here, it's a soul's desire, and then really, really not being able to have it creates a ton of internal tension for the person, where not only do you feel powerless over it, but there's something inside of you that knows you're supposed to be able to do it. So there is a need to be creative. There is a need here to feel like you are the one in charge of your own life. Every Pluto has a crisis, and this one depends on what side of it you're on. So if you are on the side of always wanting to tell everyone what to do and maintain control, and just feel like you always want to be in the limelight, or you always want to like push your purpose forward, then the crisis is going to come in ego deflation. People's not doing what you say, situations that force you to not get what you want. If you're on the powerless side, the way you can react to this placement is it's almost the same thing though. This is the crazy thing, is when you feel that powerlessness and you're like, oh, I can never get what I want. There's a opposite thing that happens where you can end up basically subconsciously getting other people to do what you want because you are such a victim, or you can't do it, or you feel like you can't do it, and then they'll come in and try to save you or help you. And sometimes you might end up taking crazy risks when you're not getting your needs met or you're not getting enough attention to just fulfill that need. And the crazy risks, come from that fifth house being the house of fun. And it's like, if that is how this expresses for you, when life gets stagnant and you need to move energy, your natural sort of not healthy coping mechanism here is to go mess up your life, go sabotage some kind of relationship usually. Now, if you have children with this placement, being in the fifth house, Pluto in the fifth doesn't mean you will or won't have children. But if you do, they're probably going to be strong-willed and they probably are not going to listen to you. Okay? And so the thing is, if you have Pluto in the fifth house, whether you realize it or not, there's a part of you that's strong-willed. So having this strong-willed child is it's like a mirror, but it's also like a lesson in not being able to have control, a lesson in letting people do what they want to do with their lives, because your kid is going to kind of have their own strong intentions. Now, if that is the case, then part of the evolutionary lesson is not only for you to learn the energy of detachment, but also to pass on that lesson to your child. You have to watch out with this placement when you're being kind and generous. You have to make sure you don't have an agenda. And that the metaphor I keep getting for this, it's kind of like giving someone a self-help book to be generous. It's like, oh, I'm going to help you so much. Here's this book. And it's like, it's just a list of things they need to do. It's like, it's kind of off-putting to the person. Now, you may not be doing this directly or even intentionally, but you have to watch out that your generosity isn't from a place of, I know what's best for you, so I'm going to give you this thing. So let's get into the lesson on this placement. The polarity point for Pluto in the fifth house is the 11th house. The fifth house is a house of being engaged and very, very invested in things. So for the fifth house, it's still right for you to actualize your creative potential, but it's about doing it in a way that is less attached to how it's received. So if you're an actor with this placement, it's about letting go of what people think of your image and giving the people what they want in a way. So it's about being able to not change who you are completely to meet other people's demands, but to learn how your creative gifts or your special gifts, what makes you unique, how that can be used in a way that benefits society. And so with this placement, you will naturally be a little more focused on how you come across, how it feels to you, what you like and what you feel about your own, purpose. And there is a lesson here in learning, what are the needs of society? How can my gifts help the whole? And the more that you can step into that detached from your own agenda, and step into the process of supporting the needs of others, then the more that you are self-actualized. So if you have this Pluto and you're like, I'm already doing that, I'm already being of service, I'm already considering what the collective needs, I'm already creating a business that's based on helping people, it's not based on me, the more you can say I'm doing that, I'm not as attached to my own desires, the better. However, there's a balance here because, again, you're still here to fulfill a unique purpose, and that feeling is there for a reason. But usually the way to fulfill that purpose is about doing it. Usually it's going to be in the way you don't expect. And I feel like a lot of this is kind of cliche in the spiritual community, but for the Pluto fifth house person, this is a more central lesson, a more significant lesson. And it's a lesson that for all of us with our Pluto, if we cling to the old ways, that's when the spiritual crisis happens. So once you know that, you can start trying to orient yourself toward that polarity point, toward that 11th house of the good of the whole, the good of the collective. Sometimes even being behind the scenes and not necessarily being about you or your image. And again, I'm not saying that every person with Pluto here is obsessed with themselves. This is going to show up differently for different people, but it's about creative control. And really what the bigger lesson here is about when you are expressing yourself creatively. You are the vessel, not the source. That is the lesson of this placement. So the more you can get that lesson, that you are the vessel of the creativity, not the source, the more you are stepping into that 11th house polarity point. Because creativity is still a part of it. It's just not about how I am so important, right? Some people with this placement, if it gets really, really out of hand, can be so strong as a God complex, where this person goes around and is like, I am the master of fate of this person, and this person is kind of treating other people, like, this is my play and you're the puppet on the string in my play. So that's like the worst case scenario here. And then the other side of that coin would be the opposite person who's like, I can't do anything. Everyone has to do something for me. You're still being the puppeteer. You're still, being the person with the puppet on the string, but you're just doing it out of place of I'm so helpless. So either way, these are the most extreme examples. You'll have to take what resonates and leave the rest, since this is a general video. It's all about releasing the need to be the director of the play. And once you step into the mindset of I'm the vessel of the creative expression of the universe or God or whatever you believe in, then that's when you're honoring that polarity point. That's the lesson your soul sort of came here to learn, if you will. So if you all have this placement and you feel blocked to recognize or actualize your purpose, consider bringing more objectivity. Consider how what you're doing could benefit the good of the whole. And if you're like, I've already done that, consider how you can be less attached to the outcome. Bring in that belief that I am just the channel here, not the source of the information, and see how that can apply to what you're working toward. And anytime you feel like you have a creative block, it's probably that you have moved away from that, slipped back into that old focus of I am the source of this. I am the source of the creativity, the inspiration, and my purpose. Now, once you have begun to integrate this lesson, you have so much incredible potential here to have such creative depth and power. So just know that on the other side of this lesson, on the other side of this evolution, there is so much when you step into that energy of being the vessel of that creativity that you can really allow to flow through you. And this is true as long as you are connected to society's needs. It's also possible for people with this placement to reach a certain level of renown, especially if they are integrating the lessons of their Pluto. And then some of the qualities of this placement are creative, tenacious, alluring, powerful, and protective. So that is what I have for the Pluto in the 5th house. Just to recap, that 5th house is all about creative actualization. You may have a tendency to revert to different ways of control, either through power or powerlessness. You may have children who don't listen to you to teach you the lesson of detachment. The more you can learn detachment, the more you are most likely to feel like you're on track for your purpose, your creative potential. Remember, creativity doesn't have to be acting and singing. There are a lot of forms of working toward our purpose that express creatively. So you could creatively teach, creatively lead, creatively be a manager. So that can show up in different ways. If you feel blocked or stagnant with this placement, the best thing to do is go back to that image of being that channel for creativity rather than the source. So let me know in a comment below, you guys, if this video helped. I always love hearing from you. I love hearing how you relate to it. And those comments help me grow more than anything else. So thank you for everyone who's commenting. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell if you want more videos like this. And stay tuned for my new course I'm launching at the end of June, How to Read Your Past Lives in the Astrology Chart. Stay tuned to my channel for more updates. I will be dropping the info on that soon, and I will see you guys in the next video.